Nammo Yidafa. Good morning. Thank you for joining me for our daily practice check-in. Listen, listen, listen. This beautiful sound calls us back to our true home. The third mindfulness training. Aware of the suffering caused by sexual misconduct, I vow to cultivate responsibility and learn ways to protect the safety and integrity of individuals, couples, families, and society. I am determined not to engage in sexual relations without love and a long-term commitment. To preserve the happiness of myself and others, I am determined to respect my commitments and the commitments of others. I will do everything in my power to protect children from sexual abuse and to prevent couples and families from being broken by sexual misconduct. We've been reading Ajahn Chah's book, Bodhinyana, collection of Dhamma talks, and we're in the Dhamma talk, The Two Faces of Reality. The forest of the senses. The world, with its never-ending ways, goes on and on. If we try to understand it all, it leads us only to chaos, confusion. However, if we contemplate the world clearly, then true wisdom will arise. The Buddha himself was one who was well versed in the ways of the world. He had great ability to influence and lead because of his abundance of worldly knowledge. Through the transformation of his worldly mundane wisdom, he penetrated and attained to supramundane wisdom, making him a truly superior being. So, if we work with his teaching, turning it inwards for contemplation, we will attain to an understanding on an entirely new level. When we see an object, there is no object. When we hear a sound, there is no sound. In smelling, we can say there is no smell. All of the senses are manifest, but they are void of anything stable. They are just sensations that arise and then pass away. If we understand according to this reality, then the senses cease to be substantial. They are just sensations which come and go. In truth, there isn't any thing. If there isn't any thing, then there is no we and no they. If there is no we as a person, then there is nothing belonging to us. It's in this way that suffering is extinguished. There isn't anybody to acquire suffering. So who is it who suffers? When suffering arises, we attach to the suffering and thereby must really suffer. In the same way, when happiness arises, we attach to the happiness and consequently experience pleasure. Attachment to these feelings gives rise to the concept of self or ego, and thoughts of we and they continually manifest. Here is where it all begins, and then carries us around in this never-ending cycle. So, we come to practice meditation and live according to the Dhamma. We leave our homes to come and live in the forest and absorb the peace of mind it gives us. We have fled in order to contend with ourselves, not through fear or escapism. But people who come and live in the forest become attached to living in it, just as people who live in the city become attached to the city. They lose their way in the forest, and they lose their way in the city. The Buddha praised living in the forest because the physical and mental solitude that it gives us is conducive to the practice for liberation. However, he didn't want us to become dependent upon living in the forest, or get stuck in its peace and tranquility. We come to practice in order for wisdom to arise. Here, in the forest, we can sow and cultivate the seeds of wisdom. Living amongst chaos and turmoil, these seeds have difficulty in growing. But once we have learned to live in the forest, we can return and contend with the city and all the stimulation of the senses that it brings us. Learning to live in the forest means to allow wisdom to grow and develop. We can then apply this wisdom no matter where we go. May all beings be well. May all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you for joining me this morning.